What is your horror story from DNA tests like 23andMe?
About 3 years ago, I took a 23andMe test because I always had suspected, or maybe hoped, that my sister's dad was also my dad. He was in my life from the beginning because my bio dad was a piece of work. Well, he isn't my father, and neither is the man who I grew up believing was my dad. My sister-in-law did some digging and found my real biological father. He's the one who reached out, did a DNA test, wanted to meet me and my children and introduce me to my siblings. For a while I held off because it was such a shock and I felt like it was moving really quickly. 4 months after we had first started talking, we met and I was welcomed with open arms by everyone. And even though it was still a little weird and I was super nervous, I am glad I took the chance to meet him. He died from COVID complications just 8 months after we found out he was my real dad.
My grandfather did not die when my dad was full like we always thought. Instead, he faked his death, walked 1,500 kilometers to the other end of the country, married a 16-year-old girl and had 7 more children, all the while leaving my grandmother to bring up the 6 children he had with her and his 2 children from an earlier marriage. Worst part was that he used the same names for the second batch of kids as his first lot.
Found out doing the ancestry DNA that my paternal grandmother cheated on her husband with her also married family doctor. My dad has brothers and a sister that he never knew about. Dad says that the doctor must have known he looks exactly like his brothers, and the doc used to always call him son during his appointments. His dad that raised him also must have known, 'cause he treated him like crap and made backhanded comments that, knowing what we know now, tell us he knew, or suspected at the very least. Not me, but my coworker found out his bio dad was not who he thought he was. Turns out he is one of the many children of fertility Dr. Donald Klein. There's a Netflix doc about him if you've never heard about him. My sister found out that half our mom's side of the family are products of incest, up and until a few great aunts and uncles.
My mom's generation has been really big into tracing our family tree. Turns out Grandpa had 2 families that we know of. If that wasn't enough to discourage my family from uncovering skeletons, a few years later, one of my cousins took a 23andMe test to find out that our grandfather is also her dad.
Someone in my grandparents' generation gave up the baby for adoption 60 years ago and our family still doesn't know/won't admit who it was. She only joined 23andMe because her daughters encouraged her to find out more about her birth family for health reasons. We now have family members who won't take the test.
I thought I was all French. Turns out I'm very English.